I thought it might be interesting to go through an example of how we take an existing procedure and rewrite it, improve it. So just to give you some context, I'm Ellis Pratt. I'm one of the directors at Cherryleaf. We're a training and technical writing services company. So part of what we do is we run courses on how to write procedures in a clear way, and we also provide services where organisations need their policies and procedures rewritten or written from scratch, and they ask us to do that. So I thought it would be good to go through an example that I found of a procedure and how we or you might approach improving it. What I'm going to use is a brigade order from the London Fire Brigade. Now this has been made available because somebody made a Freedom of Information request via the What Do They Know website, and the London Fire Brigade made that information accessible. Now this content is from 2008. There is a program going on at the moment within the services around England and Wales and Scotland to improve the policies and procedures. In fact, there's a scheme called the National Operation Guidance, or NOG, where they are rewriting and improving the content that fire officers use. So this isn't intended to be a criticism of the London Fire Brigade. It's just I needed to find an example of a procedure that could be improved, and I found this. And in fact, the modern day equivalent of this procedure may well have already been improved. From those brigade orders, what I have selected is some instructions on sprinklers and drenchers and what to do if a fire brigade or fire and rescue service goes out to a building and the sprinklers are going off. What do they do in that situation? And this is the procedure that we're going to rewrite. So we're having to make a number of assumptions. We're having to assume that the content is accurate, it's relevant to the audience, that it's up to date, that it's legally okay, that it's complete, and it's within the right place within the document. We're also assuming we understand the audience, what they know today, what they need to know. And we're also assuming in this situation that we've got an appropriate authoring tool, content management tool, and publishing tool for the content. So let's get started. Here is the procedure, and it's currently in a PDF document. So let's copy that into a Word document and we'll do our editing in that. I'm just going to delete a couple of things that are not relevant in this situation, and that is that reference, the numbers for these headings, here. So one place we can start is to look at whether we can break this document up into chunks of standalone bits of information. Now there are different words for describing this. Sometimes they're called topics, sometimes they're called chunks, sometimes they're called segments. Now one indication of where there are existing topics in the document are where there are headings, and they have marked these with those numbers and the uppercase. So we can break those there, and we can make these into heading styles in Word. So at the moment this document has 2 topics. Are there any more? We can identify whether there are any more by reading the document and seeing if within those topics or chunks of information it suddenly starts to talk about something completely different. Now there are, from experience, a number of common types of information or types of topics that can appear. And so we can use that awareness to see if we can hunt out and find any extra topics. I'll just talk about or go through a list of the different types of information or chunks or topics that might exist. So there can be things like policy statements. There can be processes, which are what to do's. There can be tasks, how to do things. There can be warnings. There can be situations where you're describing a special circumstance or an exception to the general rule. There can be information that's specific to one audience. There can be information about who does what, or roles and responsibilities. There can be reference information or lookup information. And there can be a section on what actions or next steps are required. So we can bear that in mind when we read the document, to see if suddenly we're starting to talk about those things. Suddenly it's talking about a warning, for example, and whether that merits being in its own topic. So let's read through the document. So what we've got here is a sentence: the full, normal, augmented or special attendance as appropriate is to be ordered to a call for a sprinkler gong or head actuating. So that's not very clear, but that appears to be a policy statement. Or it could potentially be an introduction or an overview. Action when no fire is present. Then we've got a number of steps of what to do or how to do things. If no fire is apparent, a thorough search of the building is to be made. If no fire is found, an endeavour is to be made to put the system in working order. Sprinkler gongs are not to be shut down by the brigade. The cause of the operation of the gong is to be investigated, and any defect found is to be remedied where, if possible. So what we have here, sprinkler gongs are not to be shut down by the brigade. What we've got in really there is actually a warning of what the staff must not do. Then we've got the building is not to be left unattended until the arrival of the London Salvage Corps, and then a link to a related brigade order. If the Salvage Corps do not arrive within a reasonable time, or if the incident occurs outside of the central zone or the London Salvage Corps, the incident commander is to ascertain from the appropriate mobilising control if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident. So we've got a general rule, and then we've got a task or a topic about what to do if that doesn't happen. That bit there. If they will not be attending or are unavoidably delayed, the police are to be informed before the premises are left. So this is what to do if the London Salvage Corps are not attending. So what we can do is we can create a new topic to cover that exception of what to do if the Salvage Corps is not going to attend. Now, having these discrete chunks of information where you have a heading that describes what's coming means that it's easy for the reader to skim down and find a particular piece of information that they're looking for. The other piece of information that we had, which belongs potentially in a standalone topic, is the warning. So I'll put that here for the moment. And we can highlight that by having a warning heading or a warning icon, or in fact both. So we now have organised our information into discrete chunks. We can now look at improving the way in which the text has been written so it's clearer, and the ways in which it is presented so it's easier for people to understand. Just before we do that, I'll just tidy up the casing on the headings. When it comes to improving the content itself, there are two aspects at which we can look at this. One is how the content is presented, and the other side is how the sentences are written, and I'll talk about the approach that we'll take for the different ways of presenting information first, and then the general rules that we apply to rewriting the sentences. So I mentioned that there are common types of information or chunks or topics that appear in a document, and there are general best practices for how to present those different types of information. This is one of the things that we cover on our training courses. So, for example, with tasks, how to do stuff, the most common and one of the best approaches is to use numbered steps. For processes or what to do, then that can also be done through numbered steps. It can also be done by using a flowchart, and it can also be done by using a table. So if you've got different people doing different things, you can have different columns to identify who should be doing what. If it's a series of options or choices, you can use an unordered list or a bulleted list. If it's lookup or reference information, you can use a table, or if it's online content, you can have a pop-up that appears. If it's conceptual information or introductions or overviews, then generally some sentences and perhaps an image can help explain the bigger picture, the concepts. And if it's special situations, then sometimes again a table can help. So if in this situation, then do this, and if in another situation, then do that. Oh, another one, warnings. We've mentioned that already. Warnings, you can present those by having an icon that can help flag up the severity of it, whether it's a thing that you must not do, something where you should take care in terms of caution, or just related or additional information. In this example, we'll keep it relatively simple by principally using numbered steps and using sentences. And in terms of how we improve the text, the sentences themselves, there are some general rules for that. One is to use the active voice rather than the passive voice. That identifies who the actor is, who is the person doing the thing. Another good rule is to have short sentences, to use easy to understand words, so that often means using shorter words rather than longer words, so things like use instead of utilize. We can, if we want, be consistent in the way in which we apply certain words like must, must not, should, should not, can or cannot. And the words that we use should be words that your audience understands. So there can be certain buzzwords that are familiar to an audience, but not to another audience. And so you need to consider who you're writing for and do they understand the words that you're using. By making it more accessible, by using easy to understand words, you're opening up the information to more people. Let's start with this topic, which is about what to do when no fire is present. So it's a task. It's about doing stuff. So a numbered list makes sense. So we can start by having our numbered list as number 1. So this sentence here, if no fire is apparent, a thorough search of the building is to be made. That's in the passive text, passive voice. You can check whether something's in the passive voice by adding the word by zombies after the verb, and it's still making sense. So if no fire is apparent, a thorough search of the building is to be made by zombies. That still makes sense. That's a sign it's in the passive voice. So we can rewrite that to be the active voice rather than the passive voice to make it clear that an action is required. So if no fire is apparent, make a thorough search of the building. Now the original step has 2 sentences in it. If no fire is found. Well, that really is a separate action. So we would have this as step 2. So we can say if no fire is found. So it says if no fire is found, an endeavour is to be made. Well, endeavour's not really clear to many people what is meant by that. So a simpler word we can use instead is try. Try to put the system in working order. Okay, the next step. So we can delete this. We have covered the cause of the operation of the gong is to be investigated, and any defect found is to be remedied if possible. So investigate, we want the active verb, so we can use investigate at the start of the sentence. So they want us to do two things. They want to identify the cause and remedy any defect. So if these didn't have to be done in any particular order, we could have a bulleted list, but I think it's implied that we investigate the cause first and then we remedy the defect. They have to be done in a certain sequence. So that covers that step. What's the next step? So again, we've got another passive verb or passive sentence. The building is not to be left unattended. So we need to rewrite that to be in the active voice. A couple of ways in which we could do this. One is to use do or do not, that type of terminology. So we could say do not leave the building until the London Salvage Corps arrives. So there's two passive voices here. The arrival of the London Salvage Corps, we have to rewrite that. Or we can use another word that means that we need to not leave something unattended. And the other word that we can use is stay. So we've got a bit more information. We've got information about what to do when the London Salvage Corps arrives, about this related brigade order. So we could have a separate topic saying related information and put it in there, but I think it probably makes sense in this situation to have it connected with the step. It doesn't have to be done in a particular order, so we can put that there. So what's this other sentence? If the Salvage Corps does not arrive within a reasonable time, or the incident occurs outside of the central zone. Well, this is an exception. This is a special case. So we need this in a separate topic, really. So we'll put it here for the moment. And then we can say, see the exceptions below. So we've got if the Salvage Corps does not arrive within a reasonable time. Okay. So we've got a new topic there. An exception. If the Salvage Corps do not arrive within reasonable time, the incident commander is to ascertain from the appropriate mobilising control if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident. Well, that's a very long sentence with lots of complicated words. That's 30 words in that sentence. So we can reduce that a bit. If the Salvage Corps do not arrive within a reasonable time, should. Ascertain, we can reword as find out. Now we could split this into two sentences. We could say the incident commander should find out if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident, or we could keep it long. Still 30 words, it's still quite long. So we could write it as this. They should ask the appropriate mobilising control for this information. They can ask. If they will not be attending or are unavoidably delayed, the police are to be informed. Again, the passive voice. So we could say inform the police. But inform is not necessarily a word that everybody knows. So we can use a simpler word than that, and that is tell. Tell the police. Before the fire brigade Now, we have a contradiction here. You've got in the procedure here, stay in the building until the London Salvage Corps arrives. And then you've got, if the London Salvage Corps are not arriving, then tell the police and leave the building. So we might want to reword this, or check with the subject matter experts whether this needs to be reworded. Stay in the building unless the exceptions below happen. And then we've got, if the incident occurs outside of the central zone of the London Salvage Corps, what do we do then? Let's look at our original text. It's not clear. If this is outside of the central zone of the London Salvage Corps, ascertain if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident. So we don't know if the Salvage Corps attends incidents outside of the central zone. We'd have to check that. We could check that by looking at Brigade Order 46/4, or by asking subject matter expert whether our understanding of this is correct or not. So we've moved everything into standalone topics and we've rewritten most of the sections. The one bit we haven't rewritten was the first sentence. And generally it makes sense to deal with any overview or introductory text at the end rather than at the beginning, once you know what it is that you're describing. And it's still not clear whether this is a policy or whether it's an introduction. The full, normal, augmented or special attendance as appropriate is to be ordered to a call for a sprinkler, gong or head actuating. So we may not need it, we could just delete it. Or we could rewrite it as, when a sprinkler, gong or head actuates the fire brigade, the fire service must attend. My screen's gone into dark mode, so the document's slightly darker than it was just a second ago. So having rewritten the content, we should leave it a little while and then come back to it and check on the document to see if it can be improved even more. So this is our rewrite. There are a couple of bits of information where we need to check, either by supporting information or by talking to the subject matter experts, whether our understanding is correct. These I've highlighted in yellow because it wasn't clear from the text. So one is, when a sprinkler, gong or head actuates, the fire service must attend. We need to double check that understanding is correct. The incident commander should find out if the Salvage Corps will attend if the incident is outside of the central zone of the Salvage Corps. We're making an assumption that's the case. We need to double check that. And the section on if the Salvage Corps do not arrive within a reasonable time, we might want to define what is meant by a reasonable time, or give an example as to go with that. And also looking back at the text that we've written, we can look at whether we can improve it any further. And I've highlighted some sections in green. So later on in the document, we just say see Brigade Order and then the Brigade Order number. In the first section, I wrote for more information. For consistency, we should probably delete for more information so that they all say see Brigade Order, or add for more information to all the other circumstances when it's written. So we'll just delete it for the moment. And looking through it, sprinkler gongs are not to be shut down. Well, we could make that active voice, but it's probably better just to use that must or must not. We could reword that to the brigade must not shut down sprinkler gongs, but I think it's okay like that. And another section that isn't clear is we have instructions on what to do when no fire is present. We don't have any information on what to do if there is a fire present when a sprinkler gong has actuated. Is that what's covered in Brigade Order number 12/1? We might need to read that, or we might need to ask to check what they do when a sprinkler gong is activated. So let's read through it. Call to sprinkler gongs or head actuating. When a sprinkler gong or head actuates, the fire brigade must attend. See Brigade Order number 12/1. Action when no fire is present. Step 1. If no fire is apparent, make a thorough search of the building. 2. If no fire is found, try to put the system in working order. 3. Investigate the cause. Try to find out why the gong activated. If you find a defect, try to fix it if possible. 4. Stay in the building until the London Salvage Corps arrives. See Brigade Order 46(3)(4). See the exceptions below. Warning: sprinkler gongs must not be shut down by the brigade. Exception: if the Salvage Corps do not arrive within a reasonable time. If the Salvage Corps do not arrive within a reasonable time, the incident commander should find out if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident. They can ask the appropriate mobilising control for this information. If they will not be attending or are unavoidably delayed, tell the police before the fire brigade leaves the premises. If the incident occurs outside the central zone of the London Salvage Corps, the incident commander should find out if the Salvage Corps will attend the incident. They can ask the appropriate mobilising control for this information. See Brigade Order 46/4. Now, I just noticed something else there. We've got exception here and not exception there. So for consistency, we can add that here as well. So this was the before, and this is the after, and I hope that the after for you is clearer. So this will be ready to go out for review to check that the rewrite is accurate and complete. So there are further improvements we can do after this rewrite. We can do some user testing and get user feedback on whether the people that will be using this content like it, they understand it, they have confidence in it. We could, if we're using online information or a content management system, look at opportunities to filter the information for different situations or different types of users. Maybe not appropriate for this particular content, but for other content it may be. We could look at how it fits in with the other content, whether it needs to be higher or lower within the document. We can look at how the information is presented, see if it's presented in the best way. We could also perhaps develop checklists that people can use in the field. And we should also consider how this content will be maintained in the future. So that's an overview of the type of approach, the way that we would look at content, rewrite it, improve it to make it clearer. If you'd like more information on Cherryleaf and the services that we provide, the training courses and the procedures writing and rewriting services that we offer, you can contact us via info@cherryleaf.com or go to our website www.cherryleaf.com.